Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and happy Halloween. Or I should also say good morning to you if you're in Central Mountain or West Coast time zone. But happy Halloween to everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. Lots to jump into when it comes to different things to consider for company benefits, and I know that we're not only Halloween, but we're also in open enrollment season. So, being that it's Halloween, I figured I'd share a quick Halloween financial joke. Drew, why did the ghost stumble home on Halloween?
No idea.
He was wearing an off-balance sheet. All right, I'll save the comedy for the dad jokes and whatnot at home. Drew, we got a lot to jump into today. For those that don't know us personally, I'm David Silver, CEO of Instrumental Wealth, and joining me today is Drew Allen, Senior Wealth Advisor with Instrumental Wealth. And a lot to get into today. As far as our agenda, we're going to tackle this in really 5 key areas that we see with our clients from a benefit enrollment perspective. And again, our goal here is really to give everybody on the webinar some answers to some key questions and some financial planning items that we always like to weigh in on when it comes to which benefits to enroll in. We're going to start off with health insurance first. This is a big one. Next, we're going to jump into ancillary benefits. So life insurance, long-term, short-term disability, vision, dental on the protection and ancillary benefits. We're then going to jump into retirement planning, specifically some things that are changing going into next year with contribution limits, and something particularly with the Secure Act for those that are over the age of 60 that you should be aware of, as well as discussing mega backdoor Roths, and if your plan allows it, how does that work? How should you take advantage of it? Where does it fit? And then lastly, we're going to get into some other additional benefits that we're seeing pop up with things like legal plans and identity theft. Lastly, we're going to get into some Q&A at the end. So thank you for everyone that pre-submitted questions. A lot of great ones we saw. We're going to save that for the end. And so as we go throughout today's presentation, if you have additional questions that come up, just put them in the Q&A section and we'll try to get to each and every one of them. Without further ado, let's jump into health insurance, Drew.
Yeah, well, thanks, David. And thanks, everybody, for joining. We look forward to spending some time with you. And hopefully this is a fruitful conversation and valuable. And again, just to reiterate, any of these things that maybe you want to go a little bit deeper on, please feel free to reach out to us. We can have an independent conversation. So a big portion of what we have a lot of clients ask us about, and a big portion of open enrollment, is health insurance. And there's always these changes happening, and which plan do I get? What's best for my family? A lot of times we do see that sometimes clients will be asking folks that should be walking through those benefits with them, an HR director, and it's sometimes confusing even for those folks too. So really help coordinating and kind of guiding clients. So some of the big questions: should I do an HMO? Should I do a PPO? Should I do a high deductible plan? What type of plan is best? And again, just to reiterate, a lot of it is going to depend on the fact pattern of your family. How do you manage your health care? How often you go into the doctor? Do you have the things that you have to go for every year? And so those things matter because you might have certain doctors that you specifically have to see. So HMO versus PPO, health maintenance organization, preferred provider network organization. So an HMO is typically going to be a less expensive plan. So you see people kind of jump to that, but it's somewhat restrictive. You have to go to certain doctors. Again, that's where if you do have certain doctors, you would want to verify, are they part of that? Everybody is cost sensitive right now, just state of the economy, et cetera. So their initially jump is to look at that. However, a PPO does offer you greater flexibility. You don't need referrals if you need to go to a specialist, things along that. So line. So again, how are you using your healthcare? How is it benefiting your family? And then we have some clients that say, hey, Drew, Dave, I don't really go to the doctor that often. And if I do, I try to go to an urgent care. And that's where some of the high deductible plans come in. And if you're someone who doesn't use your medical care regularly with a doctor, maybe doing what we would advise in that situation is looking at what is the spread between how much am I paying for a PPO or an HMO, and what's the cost difference of just doing the high deductible. And maybe we're going to talk about HSAs and how we advise clients to use those, but putting that money into an HSA, that way you're keeping control of some of those dollars for yourself. So again, the main thing between the two, HMO, PPO, or I guess three, and the high deductibles, again, how are you using your healthcare? How much flexibility do you want? Are all major components of these plans. And so again, we can help some more there and give some more guidance along with your HR professional that you might work with. But the high deductible plan is something we get a lot of questions around, specifically HSA. So Dave, why don't you talk a little bit about HSAs?
Man, you tee that up perfectly for me. Thanks, Drew. Continuing on high deductible health plans. So first and foremost, we get a lot of questions about HSAs and how do they work? Should I be contributing? How does the money grow? And so we're going to tackle a lot of those questions here. But the biggest thing before you can even consider using an HSA to your advantage is your plan has to be deemed as a high deductible health plan. Okay. And sometimes I've seen open enrollment packets where it says HSA eligible. Sometimes in parentheses, it's got high deductible health plan or HDHP next to it. If yours don't specify that, definitely ask your HR director or the benefits broker that works for your company, because in order to participate and contribute to an HSA, it's got to be deemed as a high deductible health plan. That being said, let's assume that it is. So what is an HSA? It stands for Health Savings Account. This actually came out in the early 2000s to sort of, I don't want to say replace, but it sort of took over health reimbursement accounts and took it to another level. Essentially, what a health savings account is, it's an investment account or savings account or both that you can and your employer can contribute to on a pre-tax basis. Okay. The limits each year change. We'll go through those in just a moment. But those contributions can be deductible on your ordinary income taxes. Okay. So that's the first sort of tax benefit. To Drew's point, if you're super healthy, you rarely go to the doctor, and I've got 3 kids. There's always one of them that has something going on, so we burn through it pretty quickly. But maybe that's not your situation, and you rarely go to the doctor outside of like your annual physical, or for females, your annual visit with your OB. And relatively speaking, you don't go to the doctor that much. Instead of spending a higher spend on the monthly premium for the health insurance, you can generally have a lower spend on your premium, use those premium dollars and put it into the health savings account to fund that higher deductible. If you don't end up utilizing the funds in your account to pay for your deductible or your co-insurance that year, those funds roll over to the next year. And so oftentimes what happens is, for clients that are very healthy, they don't end up burning through that balance, okay? And so they end up accruing dollars in the health savings account. We like to use the term that it's got a triple or trifecta tax benefit because the dollars that go into the plan, as I mentioned before, are deductible against your taxes. The growth within the account, so whether it's in a money market fund or a lot of plans allow for you to invest those dollars in a portfolio of mutual funds or ETFs or whatever you want to invest in, they can grow tax deferred within the account. Lastly, they can also be spent tax-free on qualified medical expenses. And so there's a whole list we can go through later if there's questions on that. But things that would be qualified medical expenses, particularly when you get into retirement, are things like your Medigap type of policies. So if you have your regular part A, part B, but you say, hey, I want a supplement plan, that can come out of there. Long-term care premiums can be paid out of a health savings account. So there's all sorts of benefits there that you can pull the money out tax-free. Now, it can be a double benefit, not a triple, if you want to use it for your retirement spending. So once you reach 65, you can pull the money out just like any other retirement account that's pre-tax. You will have to pay taxes on the income if you pull it out for a non-medical expense, if it's just a living expense. But at least you get the deduction on the way in. And while nothing's guaranteed, hopefully you'll be in a lower tax bracket so you can have some tax arbitrage. So lots to get into there. But that's in essence how health savings accounts work and the benefits for those. And I will say the numbers have not come out yet for 2025. They actually come out tomorrow. But for 2024, if you're a single filing taxpayer, you can put away $4,150. And then if you're on a family plan or you file a joint tax return, you can put away $8,300 for 2024. The 2025 numbers, these are estimates. They're projected to go up to $4,300 for an individual, and then $8,550 for a family. So, Drew, let me kick this back over to you. And I think one of the other pieces that we want to talk through is spousal and dependent care for health insurance, because there's some details there that are important to get into as well.
Yeah. So today we have a lot of spouses that are both working. We have families and lots of things going on. We really do, when we sit with a client, we encourage to gather these open enrollment booklets, because we really look for every opportunity to save clients money, but also make sure they're maximizing healthcare at the same time. And so what we want to look at is, traditionally we do see where someone says, well, I've just always been on his plan or her plan, et cetera, and the kids have always done that. But when we do a deeper dive and we start looking at it, these plans change from year to year, right? Your employer changes these from year to year. So what once was always the right way to go may not always be. So sometimes it may be move the spouse and kids to the other spouse's plan. Sometimes it's put them all on one. We often will see where employers will pay for the individual fully their coverage and not charge them anything. But as soon as they add a spouse and children or a family plan, it dramatically goes up. But some also will still supplement that family plan. So again, it's really important that you're reviewing that, looking at the changes from year over year. Hopefully they're giving you a synopsis of those changes to help streamline that a bit. But it is really important that you do actually put them side by side and see the most cost-effective way to ensure the entire family. And again, that goes into what type of plans as well as who's on those plans. So again, if you have a dual working household, make sure that you're looking at those benefits for sure. So
yeah, great point, Drew. I mean, I think so many times we've even discussed it internally about, hey, the client can actually save money here if they do things a little bit differently with the spouse and dependent here. So making sure that you check those and review those to see if that's an option. We've seen it could save $300, $400, $500 plus per month, depending on your situation there. So definitely make sure you review those. Okay, let's jump into ancillary benefits, vision, dental. Let's talk about these. We get a lot of questions on this. Let me give some advice here, since I'm in such a comedy mood. If it's free, you should take it. As we always say, if it's free, I'll take 3. But if your employer is going to pay for your dental and vision, I think that's a no-brainer for that. Or if there's a deeply discounted premium, like definitely take advantage of it. That being said, not every employer covers this. And so oftentimes with vision dental, if you're paying for it and it's totally your cost as the employee, a lot of times you have to evaluate what they actually cover. So I could talk a little bit about dental here. I've got kids that are of the ages where they're starting to see orthodontists, and I'm wondering why I didn't go to dental school sometimes. But all kidding aside, you got to look like at your situation to see, hey, does this plan actually cover what I need it for? A lot of times those orthodontia types of things like braces are not covered, and it's really nothing more than a discount plan. So I'm pretty on top of it with my teeth cleaning and x-rays and everything like that, where I go every 6 months. It's like clockwork. I know not everyone necessarily does that. And so for me, I've looked at it as, it's going to save me about 25% of what I would have actually just paid out of pocket. So for me, I like saving 25% of those costs. So I do the dental and the vision. But I think you have to look at your own situation there to say, if I'm not really going to spend the money, is it even worth the premium? Again, this is a case-by-case basis. So if you've got questions on this and you want us to review these for you, we're happy to have a deeper look at them individually. But, generally speaking, again, just putting a pretty bow around it. If you're having to pay for it, see what you're actually going to spend on the health insurance, compare that to what you're actually going to, or dental insurance, see what that compares to with you just paying out of pocket. If there's some savings there, certainly consider it. If you're saying, I'm probably not going to go to the dentist but once a year, I'll just pay as a cash payer. That can generally be a better situation for you on the dental side. Vision's almost identical to that, right? I got LASIK 15 years ago. I'm fighting the readers here in my 40s, but I don't really need to go to the eye doctor. So I just don't enroll in that personally. So again, very personal decision, but case-by-case basis. So, all right. So I think we've covered the ancillary benefits there a little bit. On the vision dental. Drew, one of the other things that comes up often is like this whole dependent care, flex savings accounts. This happens comes up very often here when people get into those child bearing years and raising young kids. So why don't you tackle this one here for everybody?
Yeah, sure. This is obviously a big one. Dependent care is become quite expensive actually. And depending on where you're at and you have multiple children in that, using an FSA. Now this is different than the HSA in that you do have to use it in that year. There are some provisions that some employers will allow for like a little bit of carryover, which I'll talk about in a second. But for the most part, you really have to use it in the year you put it in there. 100% or it's going to go away. So it goes back to the employer actually. So, in that case, planning out expenses, planning out that dependent care. So the FSA can be used for that dependent care. It's also a lot of times most people use it for also medical care too. If you knew you had a planned surgery coming up, et cetera, you could plan out the ability per paycheck to fund that. What's interesting about the FSA that a lot of people don't know is, and again, I would check to make sure your plan is set up this way, but they give you credit right once you elect, you're getting credit right away, even though it hasn't pulled out yet. So if you have something early in the year that you're going to have to pay for and you'd like it to be in a better taxable situation, you could verify this, but they'll let you pre-spend that money, which is somewhat very unique. And again, not all plans allow that, but we do see that, and clients look at that. Same with paying for it. We see sometimes, unfortunately, Dave, we see clients spend thousands and thousands of dollars, in some cases monthly on dependent care. So those can be, there are maxes, but the caveat to look at there is, can you and a spouse both contribute to these plans and use and use these plans. So again, it's a case by case. It's also employer by employer. Do they even allow it? We are seeing that slowly go away just because the HSA and high deductible plans as the companies that some of you might work for are trying to push away from some of these higher cost plans to show you that they're lowering your healthcare costs, when in reality, it's a lot of times they're just switching to the style of plan. So look at that. FSAs are still a good tool. Again, if it fits your fact pattern or your family dynamic, certainly something we can talk to you more about should you have more questions on it.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. Okay, let's get into some protection benefits here and talk a little bit about life insurance. So life insurance is a big one. We get asked this all the time by clients is, should I do the group term life insurance? And potentially, a lot of times your employer offers a certain level of coverage for you that is sort of a basic level of life insurance. So again, going back to my dad joke earlier, if it's free, it's for me, right? If they're going to give it to you, certainly that's something to consider. One of the sort of hidden things, though, that many of our clients don't pay attention to or don't even know is you are taxed on the premium that your employer pays for group term life insurance above and beyond $50,000. It becomes taxable to you. And so the cost of this excess coverage above $50,000, it's included in the employee's income and Social Security and Medicare taxes, okay? And that's really, if the employer pays any part of the premium, the policy is considered carried directly or indirectly by the employer. It can make that excess coverage taxable, okay? Now, even if you're in a 37% tax rate, the taxes that you would pay are generally less than what you'd pay in premium. So certainly, if they're going to give it to you, take it, would be our recommendation, with a few asterisks. The biggest asterisk is if you think you're leaving that employer soon, you might want to evaluate the replacement cost of that by buying an individual term life policy. The reason for that is, I know Drew has had this happen. I've had it happen more than a few times where a client leaves a company. They had maybe $1 million of group term life insurance. Employer was paying for it. And they're now in their 40s or 50s. And we're kind of like automobiles. The more mileage we get on us, the more things start breaking down. And so now they're not as healthy. And to get a new policy, it's going to cost them an arm and a leg because maybe they had a heart issue. Maybe they had a diagnosis of diabetes, or maybe they just had blood pressure, cholesterol issues, all these things that affect your rates. And so we always say is if you're thinking about leaving in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, you might want to reach out to us or your advisor and just say, or insurance agent, and just say, hey, can you run me a quote just so I can see what it costs? Because oftentimes group term life insurance is not portable or convertible to individual coverage. Okay. So just some things to be aware of there. Next up is long-term and short-term disability. Drew, why don't you go ahead and tackle this one for everybody?
Yeah, this is a big one. I mean, oftentimes on these protection benefits, people think about life insurance, but this is a really critical component. We certainly see a lot more clients get pre-disability, pre-retirement than they do pass away prematurely. So oftentimes we ask clients, this is very much a check the box, right? Do you have disability insurance? Yep, check the box. And they can't tell you what it is, how it would pay out, how long it's for, et cetera. So it is critical you look at this. On short term, if we focus on that for a second, we typically recommend with short-term disability that people build an emergency fund versus short-term disability, due to the fact that a lot of times those plans are much more costly because the propensity for you to have a 2-month issue is a lot greater than a long-term disability of a 5 or 10 year, or even take you out of the workforce. So, insurance is all based on statistics and algorithms, right? And so they price that in. And so kind of like the HSA, you're putting that money you would have spent there, or if you have an emergency fund, save those premium dollars. And if something should happen to you for that, say that first 90 days of that short term would have paid, you're covering yourself just through good financial planning. And, because the probability is low that you will have that. But if you do and you have the capability to cover it, we recommend you cover it. If you don't have that emergency fund, work alongside or budget out and try to get there, but maybe you do consider it for your protection. Switching to long-term disability, this one is depending on your age, could be a long time if you become disabled. And we're seeing the change. Most people think, hey, I'm a good driver, or I don't do anything too risky. I don't think I'm going to get hurt. But we're also seeing a pickup in a lot of diagnosis they're not physical related, but they're cognitive related, that put people out on disability. So it's really important you understand your benefits there. Most of what we see is 60% of a base salary that may or may not include bonus type extra income. And then they usually capped, 5,000, in some cases, maybe a 10,000 cap, depending on your income. And so our guidance there as you're looking at open enrollment is, what is your family budget? If one of you went down, or if you're a solo earner, if you went down, do you have enough cash flow that comes in that could cover your bills? And if you don't, you really do need to really consider these plans. So one side note on the short-term disability, just to back up there, should you be thinking about getting pregnant and having children in the state of Florida? Now, this is state specific, so you'd have to look at your state if you're joining us outside of Florida. But a pregnancy is considered a short-term disability. So if you're going to try to get pregnant, we would say, hey, maybe look at that, because that can supplement while you're out on maternity your income there. So again, super important to look at these disability benefits. But
yeah, no, that's great, especially on the maternity piece, right? So again, reach out to us if that's you and you want us to look at your plan specifically. All right, I realize we're a little bit behind time here. We want to make sure that we leave ample time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to kind of speed through the retirement planning. I'm going to flash this up on the screen real quick just so everyone can see this. The numbers have not come out for 2025 yet. They actually coincidentally come out tomorrow. So you got something to look forward to tomorrow if you're on your Google search. Here's the projected limit increases for next year. So if you're in a 401k plan, your basic contribution limits are projected to go up by about $500 on the max deferral. If you're over age 50, the catch-up stays the same. Here's the key thing. The Secure Act 2.0 allows for a higher catch-up limit for folks that are working post 60 years old. You'll see that number there. It's projected to be 150% of the catch-up limit at $11,250. So if this is you're over the age of 60, this should be something you should be paying attention to. There's more changes that are coming in 2026, but for 2025, this was part of the Secure Act 2.0, and just really pay attention to this component in particular. Okay. Let's jump into traditional versus Roth, and then we'll get into mega backdoor Roth and wrap things up with some Q&A here. Drew, you want to tackle the traditional versus Roth?
Yeah. So as we start to look at the components of how you can contribute to your plan, a lot of people are familiar with these, so we won't spend a ton of time here, but traditional is just going to be pre-tax, Roth's after tax. The benefit there, obviously, do we tax our seed, or we get taxed on the harvest, right? And I think that, again, that will have a lot to do with taxable situation, taxable income, running those calculations, and what do those benefits look like to you today, ultimately hoping that if we're in a lower tax bracket in retirement, we did pre-tax, that's a benefit to us. If we think we're a high income earner and we need that pre-tax deduction, we'll take it. And really the Roth comes into, I can just pay it today. I'm in a lower bracket, or even if I'm not in a lower bracket, I'm in a high bracket, but I'm outside of a Roth IRA because of my income limits. I want to contribute to the Roth side of my 401k because I get a bigger contribution in there. those are all parts of our planning that we're working with clients. And really, as they go through this, the key here on open enrollment is being in the plan. You can then make changes throughout the year as far as percentages, but you got to be in the plan. So for open enrollment purposes, just get in your plan so that you have these opportunities for the future.
That's awesome. Okay, so I know that we're a little over on time. I want to be respectful for those that need to run. We're going to be sending out the recording here. So feel free to jump if you're out of time here, or submit your Q&A. And again, we'll send this out to everybody. I want to actually jump into the mega backdoor Roth, because we get a ton of questions on this. So I'm going to go ahead and put up a visual here and just walk through this. So this was something that got created during the first Secure Act, which allows for you to put money into a retirement plan after you reach your 401k deferral limit and you receive the company contribution in as a post-tax contribution into your 401k plan, and then convert that into a Roth. So I've got this visual here. I think this is easy to sort of understand. Most people don't realize or recognize that the IRS limit for the total contribution into a 401k plan is not just your elective deferral. It's your elective deferral as an employee plus the employer portion of that cannot exceed $71,000 in 2025. Okay. So let's use this example up on the screen. Let's suppose I, as an employee, am putting away $23,500, which is the IRS max deferral amount. My company is going to give me $5,000 as a match. Okay. I still have $42,500, excuse me, of excess room that I can contribute to a 401k plan. Now, I'm not able to take a deduction on that, but I can contribute it on a post-tax basis, and then I can convert that to a Roth where those dollars grow tax-free. So this is a huge opportunity for planning for our clients that are earning excess income that they have a tremendous amount of savings capacity on. This allows them to put a lot of money away and allow it to grow tax-free. Again, this is very specific to your employer. So if you're wondering if your plan has this, you want us to take a look at it, reach out to Drew, reach out to me, reach out to your advisor here, and we'd be happy to take a look at your plan to see if you would benefit from this. That being said, Drew, I want to kick this over to you next on some of the additional benefits here, specifically talking through legal plans, identity theft, and then we'll jump into some Q&A.
Yeah, we'll be brief here so we can get to the Q&A. And I think these are just two things we see pop up and clients ask us about them. Should I partake in a legal plan or should I take part in identity theft protection plans that, they've got, group pricing on? And I hate to give it the answer, but it depends. They can be valuable. I mean, if you don't have basic estate planning done and they're offering you a will, or you have questions because maybe you own a rental property and, hey, this particular legal plan will offer you the ability to call and ask questions about, hey, how do I do this? Or can you review my rental contract? And there's all kinds of things that people will use those legal plans for. So depending on the cost and pricing, what we would encourage is look at what they're offering you. It's usually one company. What's the price of it? If I went out in the private market and just bought one of those plans, could it be beneficial? And again, it's kind of like healthcare. How am I going to use it? If I'm not really going to use it, don't spend the money on it. But and if I don't have a huge legal need, or at least a perceived need that you might think you have, do you spend the money on it? But certainly it does pop up and we get asked about it. And then secondarily, the identity theft protection is something that is definitely coming up. Unfortunately, we live in a world where you're all sitting on this call because your employers are offering you a benefit and you're trying to see if those benefits are good. And then there's folks out there that don't work for an employer that are trying to steal identity. So unfortunately, we hate to say this, but we see this more and more where somehow private information, company information got stolen from some big company. So just having those in place, typically we see some deep discounts on identity theft protection on plans that are popping up. So
Yeah.
if you have that, take a look at it. Again, it's case by case on it.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. All right. Well, let's jump into the Q&A. We got some great questions here prior to the call. And then a few of you, I think, also have submitted some throughout the call. So if you have questions as we go or through any of the material, make sure you use the Q&A box on your screen to submit those. So let's jump into the first one here, Drew. Would love to invest my HSA. Worth it with 2 kids? Ooh, this is a really good one. So I go back to using my kids as an example. I really never have a rollover balance in my HSA plan, unfortunately. I'd like to, but between their doctor visits and all the other stuff that they have, we generally kind of blow through that deductible and the balance in the plan. Now, I still utilize it. And the reason I still utilize it is for the tax deductibility of the contribution to the plan and the hope, the optimistic hope that I'll actually have a balance one day in there when one of them doesn't need it. So now, again, this is very specific to your situation. And so sometimes a tax deductibility may not be as beneficial for some clients, where the added cost of the higher deductible and burning through that deductible plus your premium may be more than you just going on a regular copay plan. So again, very specific to your situation, but I just using myself as an example, I still use it. It's beneficial from a tax perspective for me to go that route. And if I do have a balance, I can roll it over. So hopefully that answers your question. And again, if it doesn't, if you want us to look at it, just reach out to me or Drew. We'd be happy to tackle that. Okay. If I have a question about health insurance, who should I go to? My HR director or the insurance company or the provider? Drew, why don't you tackle this one? I know that you have some thoughts around this. So let me kick this one over to you.
Yeah, this is a great question. I actually really like that this question was asked. We typically, and this goes with all insurance. So whether this is health insurance, this is life insurance, disability insurance, there's professionals in your life that kind of guide you through. But specifically on this, your HR director, huge valuable resource. Oftentimes they'll have similar questions that you might have, right, about a situation, because everybody's situation is so unique. So one of the sayings we kind of use is talk to the person who writes the check, right? Not to say that the HR person, your professional, may not know the answer, but they're not actually the one writing the check. So if you know that something's about to occur or something did occur and you decide to call United Healthcare, let's say as an example, and say, how does this work? Is there a way I can minimize my cost? Your HR director may not know, and candidly, that's okay, because that's a very specific question. Mm-hmm. And so we typically say, hey, who writes the check? That's who you need to talk to, because it is such a big deal. And I think that your first line should be the HR director. Say, hey, maybe you don't even have the phone number, maybe you don't have your insurance card, et cetera. They can guide you there. But to say, hey, do you have any experience with this? I'm going to call the insurance provider, but what's been your experience? Has anybody else dealt with this? And if you have that relationship that you can talk to them about that, go ahead. They're a huge resource, but who writes the check is typically who we really want to talk to, especially on things like disability insurance as well. There's such nuance to how those coverages get paid. So we typically say, hey, really call the insurance carrier. They also like to know what's going on too. So if they know a claim is coming, it can be beneficial and they can help somewhat reduce costs there. So I think that, the answer is everybody is comfortable as you are sharing your personal information with maybe somebody at your employer, but certainly the insurance company that's who writes the check. So that's who I would recommend you go to.
Yeah, and I would also say that oftentimes we're all used to this prompt message when we call, but they always say for training purposes, this call is being recorded. So even if they mess up, hopefully you can take good notes of who you speak with and write down the time and the date. I have had this happen personally. I have a son that has some special needs, and we've called the health insurance company many times where they've said that something would be covered, and then we get the EOB and it's not. And we've taken good notes and learned through experience. And oftentimes we're able to get them to make an exception on that because maybe somebody gave us the wrong information or something like that. So make sure you take notes on that. Okay. Taking advantage of HSA with state PPO. So I'm not sure I'm totally following that as far as the state PPO. I think what that's referring to is if you're on a PPO plan, can you take advantage of the HSA? And the key to that is, if I'm understanding the question correctly, is the plan high? Is it deemed as a high deductible health plan, and is it HSA eligible? And so I know that there are, if you work for the state of Florida, if that's what that's referring to, I know that they have plans that are, but again, we probably need a little bit more detail on that one. So again, if that's something that you want to reach out to Drew or I individually on, happy to kind of try to tackle that a bit further for you.
There actually, and Dave, just to piggyback on, there actually is a high deductible state PPO. So again, assuming this is in Florida,
right?
The state of Florida does offer a high deductible PPO that you could take advantage of. But again, you have to dig into it because they have a standard PPO, the HMO, the high deductible PPO, and the specifics there. But we would recommend that, again, for most people, if you're in a high deductible plan, take advantage of the HSA.
Awesome. These have been really great questions. And in summary here, I hope that for everybody watching this, both in the live and the recording, this was helpful. We'd love to get your feedback on this. If there's things that you wanted us to cover that maybe we didn't get a chance to, or maybe with your plan specifically, let us know. We welcome your feedback here. And hopefully some of the topics that we did cover, we're able to help give you some guidance as you and your family are making these decisions. And lastly, if you do want any of our advisors, including Drew or myself, to have a look at your benefits and help give you some guidance on them specifically, happy to do so as well. Reach out to us, schedule some time with us on our website at instrumentalwealth.com, schedule some time with your advisor, and we'll dive into it. For everybody, have a happy Halloween, and thank you for your time and attention and participating today. Have a great one.
Thank you.